Greetings. For this lesson, we're going to be working with Quantum Starlight Streaming Recalibration, also called QSSR. This was given to me, probably around 2005 or 6. And it comes from my Inner Planes mentor, Thoth Hara. It's a process of healing, rebalancing, bringing one back to 0 point. So I'm going to read you the original material. I might pause and speak about it here and there, but for the most part, I think I pretty well have it as I want to present it to you. So I'm going to read it to you. We're going to go through it. And in this particular video, and bear in mind, you will also have a written copy of this in the PDF that accompanies this video. Then in the second video, we're actually going to go through it in a more activational way. Once you've done that, you can do it on your own. You don't have to watch videos to do it. You can just, do your own process, perhaps even create eventually a shortcut version. I would not suggest a shortcut version at first. Work with it, in your own pace, but try to keep it in the format as it is given. But, a week or two into it, if you feel you really like this and are really getting some results with it, then you can start maybe shortcutting it a little bit, bringing it down and just triggering the memory of the whole feeling of it. Because once we've ingrained it into our neurons, we don't have to follow the exact procedure so closely. But it is important to do that at first. I would say at least for the first 2 weeks, especially if you're doing it. Well, if you're doing it every day, probably 1 week would do it. But if you're going to do it 3 times a week, I would say continue it at least 2 weeks with the longer version. That said, let us begin. Quantum starlight streaming is a streaming or pouring in of highly refined starlight into the body. Actually, it is always happening for everyone. However, when you focus upon it and ask for recalibration, it clears the circuitry for a new round of infusion. The DNA is connected to a universal grid or quantum light calibration that is neither here nor there, and yet everywhere. DNA manifests directly from that grid, and it can change in an instant. So why is it not doing so? It is, on a subtle and yet important levels. These subtle levels contain major triggers for future changes of far more consequence as Earth moves forever deeper into creating its new Earth hologram. The streaming of quantum starlight is becoming of greater definition, enhancing more quickly the entire human body landscape, beginning with the smallest crystalline structure in the DNA. By calling upon the QSS, quantum starlight streaming, you are directly and consciously accessing the quantum field grid. You are sending the message, I see you, respond. The entire universe is scripted to respond to code. DNA is the essential code breaker, sending and receiving in the human realm. The sender, receiver in the human realm. It is also composed of starlight, just as everything is. Well, I can't seem to read that, can I? Let me try it again. It is composed of starlight, just as is everything else in and about you. QSS, quantum starlight streaming, is the high frequency level of encoding coming into the DNA. If one line were to change a number by just 1 decimal, the whole human form would change drastically. Yet the quantum field of grid keeps the QSS from wobbling, from any distortion in the stream. However, when the field begins to change, as it is now in the whole planetary system, so the streaming changes. This is intended, for the greater plan is always about change. So, Before we continue, let's review this for just a moment. We go back to the line, the DNA is connected to a universal grid or quantum light calibration that is neither here nor there, and yet everywhere. DNA manifests directly from that grid, and it can change in an instant. So why is it not doing so? It is on subtle yet important levels. So what it's really saying here is that the changes are taking place, but you need to be calling attention to it into your conscious being, bringing it forward, saying, I see you, I make that connection, so that the whole being can benefit from this change rather than just these subtle areas. Now I'm going to next read the process to you. I'm just reading it to you. Don't try to do it. Just listen to the process. We want to just integrate it into the system first without trying to do it, in any structured way. Just listen to it. So here we go. The process. Now let us imagine, each of you, how the quantum star streaming looks to your senses as it pours into your DNA. Take some moments, see, feel, and call upon the streaming. Say, and this is what you're going to be saying when you do the process, I see you. Respond. Let the recalibration begin. So that's I see you. Respond. Let the recalibration begin. You're going to bring this right into your solar plexus. That's where the big burst of energy comes. It's going to infuse all your chakras, but that's where the energy comes into your being. Feel the liquid light trace geometries of your DNA deep in the core of the structure, filling and refreshing the codes therein. The code of the DNA that gives the heart its intelligence, for the heart is the supreme instrument of intelligent coherence in the body. So now you've brought the light energy into the solar plexus, but then it just moves up into the heart like this dove rising from the nest, and it fills the heart, the wings spread of the dove in the heart, and that's where the burst of light becomes cohesive. Feel the code being received by the heart, updating its function and coherency. Now bring yourself back to here and now, but know that the streaming never stops until your body ceases life on this plane, and even then its template is stored in your ethereal body for future assimilation within incarnation. I'm going to briefly talk about the quantum starlight streaming, or QSS. These are starlight codes, your codes, which come from the starlight of your bodies that was created when the Big Bang banged. And really, Thoth doesn't agree entirely with the Big Bang. We're using that term there to get an idea of it, but that science is not entirely correct. But think of all of your spiritual bodies coming into light with some kind of moment of response, universal response, which we're going to call here the Big Bang. So at that moment, these codes were brought into the field of what was to become any kind of body you might have. When your bodies, plural, are created in any lifetime or any planet or dimension, they have the same star codes. This keeps track of all of you, so to speak. When in the QSS recalibration mode, or the QSSR, you're being called upon this streaming to bring all into recalibration, to center, to the 0 point. Everything that is of the elements has the QSS streaming and can thus be recalibrated in this manner, including your garden and even the energies in your home. When you call upon your QSS to recalibrate, you are calling upon your oversoul to stream the 0 point or first bang output into your body. I don't even like that word bang. Let's call it first impulse, quantum impulse of universal being into your body. It is like saying, okay, this is where the streaming starts. This is my 0 point. Recalibrate all to this reference. Now, why are we doing that? It's not like we're wiping away everything we were between that moment and now. It's not that. It's simply that the energy system needs to be defragged. You know, it needs to come back to that energy point. Excuse me. Sorry about that. My voice needed to be defragged for a moment. It's like all your energy systems need to be cleared back to zero. Not in the sense of the physical systems. If you did that, you'd probably keel over because you wouldn't be able to keep your electrical body going, you know? So we're not talking about that. We're talking about defragging the energy systems that of the higher etheric level, where the starlight is just pouring into your etheric body. And from that point, orchestrating the functions and the codes that come into the physical body. We have an etheric body or bodies working for us, and we have the physical. And so with the etheric, that's where all the initial higher form beingness of you is created. When you incarnate, you bring that system into a functioning physical reality. But it's always queuing off of the etheric. So if you clear the etheric back to zero, you are disengaging it from all the physical stuff that's kind of seeping into the etheric, that's clogging it up, you know, the junk info, you know, the stuff that kind of got left over between the two communication systems. You got the etheric communication system, the physical, and as they communicate, there's this junk stuff that starts forming and backing up in the etheric. Actually, it's backing up in more the astral, but the astral is the outer layer that's, you know, working with the etheric, so it bleeds into that whole etheric system. So when you defrag your etheric, then you're getting rid of all the junk that's been filtering in from the physical. And then the physical can start saying, wow, I've got a clear program to work with now. But, you know, that keeps happening, you know, comes back and starts building up again. So that's why the recalibration is a good thing to work with at all times. Sorry about the noise here, just a moment. I don't know why it is, but when I start doing a recording, my pussycats want to play with things that make noise. So apologies. I have opened the door and let them go play out in the living room. Okay, so now let's continue with the reading. Our starlight drifts with the decay of atoms, moving through time like the dandelion fluff on the breeze. Recalibration brings it back to 0 point, at least in that moment. Of course, it will immediately start to drift again, but it gives you a moment to reference your 0 point, which sends a tone or signal out to your entire body that is reminding all your cells exactly who and what you are and where you are intended to go. There are many ways you can activate QSS recalibration or QSSR. One is as given above, calling upon it with a Q of some kind, such as QSS recalibrate now. You can also add a target, which would be a template of some kind, a grid to help focus the energy. This could be a crystal, which you program with your intention to be your target, or several crystals in a pattern, a particular pattern, as you feel so guided, to cue you into the QSSR. It can also be an energy art, such as a mandala, etc. You can do QSSR on water, food, and even your garden. With food and water, QSSR is just before eating or drinking. For a garden, set some QSR programmed crystals within it, and then call upon recalibration for it several times a day. You don't have to be at the location for this to work. And now, if you aren't at the location for this to work, you can look out your window if your garden's out there. But if you need a picture, like let's say you have a garden elsewhere, not at your home, someplace else, or you have farmland somewhere, you can do it for all of this, but you need if it's long distance, you need a picture or something from that place that helps you connect to it. QSSR for another person. You can send QSSR to another person, but there's a specific difference in doing this. First, you ask the being or that person for permission to aid them in QSSR. This request can be made silently through the inner planes or verbally to them. You then proceed with the QSSR with the intention that only if the being of this other person is engaged in the process is it viable. In other words, it can be silently sent to someone who would not consciously cooperate, but their greater being would. Now, I would only recommend doing that if you're dealing with someone who is schizophrenic, who's in a coma, who's just simply not able to communicate with you, or who is in such a bad state of mind that you would not be able to get a really conscious answer, if you know what I mean. But if that's the case, you can work it that way. But still ask in your inner being, ask to them, their higher self, if they agree to, and wait for that signal to return. In groups, QSSR can be especially powerful in groups of people all intending and focusing recalibration together. What occurs then is that not only the individual in the group recalibrating, but the group as well, as a unit of energy. This group process can be done in person or in a conference call, in a virtual reality setup, etc. How far could we take this? Thoth has said we can even send it to whole nations. To do that, one would need to ask permission to assist the mass consciousness of that nation, not each individual within it. I'm seriously I'm talking about that there. I don't want to go into that. Okay. To capsule what QSSR does, it recalibrates the star fields within the body, the entire body, all energy bodies included. This brings the whole elemental and energy being back to 0 point, to that contact zone where you feel you are free of static and have a blessed moment to reconnect to source. This reconnection, though brief, will send a signal through your entire system. This signal will charge the cells, DNA, etc. with renewal of system memory. This is basically a wake-up call. Oh yes, I remember now what I am and what my program is. So it begins in the etheric, it moves through this astral connective vibration, it clears all that out, and as it's doing that, it's starting to clear all the cells and the memory in the cells. The consciousness is bringing it back to center again, clearing out all the stuff in between. And that creates a signal, a target energy that just floods through the body. Now, you may not feel it the first time you do it, the second time, the third time, the fourth time. This is a process. It's bringing that system online, and it may take a while to really target it correctly because, you've got a lot of filters going on here, and these old filters have to kind of break up. So that's why the process works in doing that. And sometimes you're going to get a stronger signal than at other times, depending where you are in your event cycle, in your life event cycle. So I'm going to conclude this video, and then you can move on to the second one, which will bring you into an actual activational presence with the whole production. And remember, in this second video, you are moving into a balancing of the state. You're visually seeing and experiencing and feeling it. Once you've moved through this second video, you will be able to, you might want to watch this second video over and over for a while, maybe not, that you might want to get a hold on it. And then you take it in outside of that and you go into your own space. You do it, in your own timing and way, but you're using the same format to do so. And after a week or two, you can even start, massaging that format. But the key essence of it needs to remain. All right, this is the conclusion of video 1.